The Movie Preview Critic. Informing and entertaining your movie world.
What's up, good movie lovers? Welcome to a movie review for Legion. Now, I did not do a preview review for this, and I kind of regret it because I went into this movie having only seen the trailer one time when it first came out. I didn't know anything, didn't do any kind of research, and the marketing lied. There's a lot that needed to be discussed. This isn't what it seems. So before I get into that, just to quickly remind you, the way that these movie reviews go is that they're spoiler filled. So if you don't want any surprises ruined, if you want to go in fresh, do not listen to the rest of this review. I'm going to be talking about a lot of details of what happened in the film. So you get a 5-second count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, you've been warned. So let's break down the story. God has lost faith in humanity, and he's sending his army of angels down, led by Gabriel and Michael, to destroy us, to wipe us out. Michael doesn't like that idea. He still believes that there are some people who prove that we can become something more than what we've shown thus far. So he breaks ranks, goes down, and specifically wants to save a child that's yet to be born to a pregnant woman named Charlie, who works in a diner in the middle of the desert. This diner is owned by Bob. He has a son named Jeep, Jeep, who is in love and obsessed with Charlie. He kind of follows her around like a puppy dog, and for some reason, he wants to save her. She's kind of this lost cause. There's a character named Percy who works as a cook. He seems to be a war veteran who's lost his hand and has a hook now. Then there are some visitors to this diner, namely a family, mother, father, and daughter. The mother and father are kind of uppity rich. They have a BMW that's broken down, and Jeep is fixing the car for them, so they're in the diner waiting. And they're kind of distracted by the materialism of society, you get the sense. And the daughter is very much like this rebellious late teen, dressing very sexy and doing bad things so that the parents notice her because they're obviously more concerned with other aspects of their lives. And you get the sense that the mother is a little bit jealous of the daughter because she's young and beautiful and the mother is aging. And the last character to show up is Kyle, who's on his way to court in Los Angeles. He lives in Las Vegas. So he's kind of this criminal type, but he's not necessarily a cliche criminal. He's a little more depth to him. Now, what's interesting about this is that the angels aren't going to come down looking like the movie poster. The movie poster for this film is really deceiving. It has Michael, the archangel, with these ripped abs like they're right out of 300 with the wings, and then he's holding a knife and a machine gun. I remember looking at the poster just thinking, okay, this movie better explain how this all makes sense, because I can appreciate that the genre is being bent a little where it's religious apocalypse and you would expect kind of angels coming down and heavenly powers that we've all kind of seen before, but an angel using a machine gun? Really? Oh, and it gets better because the angels, the way they come down to destroy humanity, it's a little bit absurd, but I also like the inventiveness of this, is that the angels possess humans, basically turning them into these angel demonic zombies. And it sounds a little bit kooky, but I love the justification for it because it fits within the theology of Christianity. And we're not going to get into the beliefs and all of that. But basically the whole idea that a person can either be redeemed or damned based on their actions. These angels are able to possess people who have lost a little bit of the goodness, who have become corrupted and rusted. Really cool idea. Not really that well done because number one problem with this film is that the rules are not explained. Anytime you're doing something new and different, you have to establish within our minds and the audience, what is this universe exactly made up of and how do things work? Just like Morpheus did to Neo in The Matrix or Obi-Wan to Luke in Star Wars, you got to explain, how does the Force work and what's this all about? Or what is the Matrix? Michael is the Morpheus or Obi-Wan character coming from heaven with all the knowledge. He has to explain very quickly right away to the other characters in the film and to us, the audience, here are the rules of the game. This is why God's mad. He's sending angels down. Here's what they can do in angel form. Here's what they can do once they possess people. There's this cool idea, really can respect this film for coming up with this notion that God's lost faith in humanity, so Michael's breaking ranks because he wants to give God his faith back. Very risky idea because you could say, well, God knows everything. He knows the past, present, and future. He's the reason we all exist. And you can get into those metaphysical questions. I don't want to do that right now. But really cool aspect that this film tries to do. So I can respect that, like Book of Eli, it's bringing up issues that, especially in religious themed apocalyptic films like The Seventh Sign or The Prophecy, that are generally tiptoed around. If you're going to do something like this, if you're going to bring religion into it, don't make it necessarily like a Kirk Cameron kind of Left Behind film where you're already preaching to the converted or you're really trying to recruit people. Just have these characters believe what they believe and have them fight with that with each other, and we'll observe. We don't want to be talked at. We just want to observe so we can feel like, okay, they don't know I'm watching, but this is bringing up some really interesting ideas. I'm going to think about it on my own, and I'll decide. I didn't pay to watch a guy give me a speech. So I wish the rules would have been explained, and the reason they aren't, and the reason this film's a little bit flawed is because it's made by first-time writers and director. The two people mainly responsible for creating this, Stuart Scott, who's the director and co-writer, his background is in special effects. He's done movies like Superman Returns and the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. The other one is Peter Schnick. He's the co-writer who's mainly worked as an editor in the 90s and early 2000s on films like The Chase, Barbed Wire, and Detroit Rock City. Their cinematic muscles are not worked in these areas of directing and writing, and especially in the writing, you can tell it's not well developed. This is one of the dangers of a spec screenplay, of an original idea. Because it's not based on anything that already exists, like a novel or a TV show, there's a risk that the universe is not going to be thought through 100%. The great thing about adaptations is that they've already been worked on a ton. If it's a novel, a novelist by nature is just going to do all this extra work to develop just a layered and textured total reality. If it's a TV show, you have a lot of episodes and multiple seasons to develop characters and storylines and come up with ideas. If you're going to do an original idea, always remember you have to do the same amount of work as a novelist, as anyone else who comes up with a complete universe and three-dimensional characters. Unfortunately, this film did not think everything through. It didn't establish the rules, and it didn't have Michael explain that to us, and as a result, we're sitting there in the audience thinking, how are they doing that? What are the rules? How do you kill them? Okay, so Michael's got machine guns. That means if an angel's in a human body, they're vulnerable to everything a human's vulnerable to. How come they can't use their heavenly powers if God wants to destroy them? Why doesn't he just give them these amazing powers to wipe us out? Why even give us a chance? These questions need to be addressed at the beginning so we're not thinking about them later. The lack in the writing skill here is also evident because this film borrows from a lot of movies. You have The Terminator, where Michael is very much like Kyle Reese, and Charlie is very much like Sarah Connor, and he has to protect the mother of the son who's going to save us from apocalypse, and Skynet is kind of like God, where it's this all-knowing super intelligence that wants to wipe us out. It also borrows a lot from Night of the Living Dead. It's very much a zombie movie where you have these angel zombies, but more importantly, it's people locking themselves into one location, fighting against these evil forces coming from the outside. That's what's most deceiving about the previews for this film, is that you feel like it's going to be this big battle. It's called Legion. You know, I want to see a lot of angels flying and destroying humanity. But no, it should be called Legionnaire, because you only really get Michael as the one angel. You get Gabriel, his brother angel, who's much more aggressive and happy to please God, especially when it has to do with destruction. But he doesn't come until later in the movie, which is another problem. You got to have him as the main leader of the armies. He's got to be the main antagonist, the main quote-unquote bad guy. We need to understand him just like we understand Agent Smith or Darth Vader. Let his motivations be known. Why is he taking these actions? What does it mean to him? And make sure you give everybody a journey. So Gabriel should start one way and end up in a different place. Same thing with Michael, same thing with Charlie, especially since Charlie's the one who gives us the opening and closing narration talking about how it seems that God has lost faith in humanity. Well, what does that mean? Why? Now, the structure of the zombie, let's bring people together in one location, can really lend itself to exploring these areas and these themes in a really great way. The Mist kind of did this. A couple years ago, this came out. It was a Stephen King story adapted by Frank Darabont, where this mist starts surrounding this town, and all these people take shelter in the supermarket, which is very much like the Twilight Zone. The monsters are due on Maple Street, where aliens turn off the power in a small town, and the neighbors go from trusting each other into like this paranoia. We're all against each other. Here's what happens between humans. We all resort to kind of survival of the fittest if we're really put to the test. Really interesting stuff can happen in these kind of locations. actions, but this film is not an action, sci-fi, fantasy, special effects extravaganza. It's very much like 12 Angry Men. It's people in one location who aren't really all that interesting because their beliefs aren't necessarily that developed. Again, it goes back to the writing. You need to have these people represent society. If we're not going to go out into the cities and see what's being destroyed and see what has made God lose faith in us, the actions that humans have taken, the things that we've built, the obsession with materialism, all these different things, whatever it is, if this film is going to take the subject on, if this film is going to have such a loaded theme, really explore it. And you can do that by bringing characters that represent this society and having them represent the beliefs and letting these beliefs battle each other in the verbal, dramatic conflict with each other. It doesn't really happen here. And that goes back to the underdeveloped characters that don't have journeys. Like most zombie films, almost all the characters die except the main one. So you have Charlie, Jeep, and Michael, the only survivors, which is fine, but it's also important that the deaths of all the other characters need to mean something.
Long live good movies!